So last week you were getting familiar with some of these basic selection tools here, and hopefully working with the move tool, having that on auto select, things like that. There's an awful lot to cover in terms of selection tools. So I just wanted to make in this first video talking about some of the sort of bigger sweeping ones. You may notice as soon as you have an image open in Photoshop, there's a contextual toolbar that shows up right below, and one thing it says here is select subject. This is relatively new. I don't remember how many years ago this was added, but this is an example of AI in Photoshop. So I can click select subject, and if it's a clear subject, it might do a really good job. So in this, for example, I can look over here and you see the marching ants. That's what's been selected, and it did do a very good job. The only thing I can see it's missing is like the tip of this. So that's pretty good. Maybe like right here it should have not selected in there, but anyway, just some small little things. So sometimes you can get lucky with that. I'm going to just unselect that. And let's see if we take the object selection tool, if it gives us the same results. So with the object selection tool, because my object that I want to select covers the whole canvas, I'm going to select the whole canvas. Just clicking, holding down the mouse, letting go. And it takes a second, and then it tries to find the subject and select it as well. And it also does a pretty good job here. All right, so let's look at another example. Same thing, I'm going to try select subject here, and let's see how it does. It does a pretty good job, but you can see like right over in here, for some reason, it didn't select that. Also maybe gets a little bit strange up in the areas over here. So we can work on that a little bit more. I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to zoom in so I can see it a little bit more. And I'm going to switch to my selection brush tool. So with the selection brush tool, I can paint in the areas that I want to be included in my selection. Now this tool, right now the way I'm working with it, has a plus sign in it. So that means that when I paint, I'm adding to the selection. It's kind of hard to tell because it automatically makes my selection a pink, and this flower was kind of pink. So I'm going to switch back to an ordinary selection tool. So now it switches back to marching ants, and you can see the result of what I did. And I need to kind of go in and get that a little bit closer. It didn't quite get all the way to the edge. Let's say I made a mistake. Oh, I painted out like that. So if we go back to a regular selection tool, it turns to the marching ants. You can see what I did. So I'm going to go back to my selection brush tool, but this time go up to the options bar and choose to make that tool a subtraction tool. So now when I paint, it is taking away from my selection. So the main takeaway I want you guys to get is, yeah, there are these options to give you like fast selections, but most of the time it's like a multi-step process. I think I noticed that this wasn't included, so I'm adding that back into the selection. So over here, I can see that my initial selection took things that I didn't want it to. It took a little bit of the background. You see that? So I'm going to zoom in and then go back to my selection brush tool, but switching it to be in the subtraction mode. So I can kind of go and basically I'm erasing my selections, the parts that I don't want to be selected. Remember to use those left and right square bracket keys to be able to adjust the size of the diameter of your brush. That's really helpful. And so I could make this. So do you get the idea, hopefully? So we can use this selection tool to be able to add or take away. And then to be able to view it as the marching ants, you can just select any of your regular selection tools. I'll zoom out now so you can see. All right, so now I've touched up that selection. Now if you're doing something like this, it's very clear what the object is, so select subject will work very well. But you should always, especially for this upcoming project, remove the object from its background. When I look at your pieces, I will be, if you have a white background, I'm going to fill it with red, so that way I can test, did you actually get rid of all the white background? So in this example, I wouldn't need to do any touch-up. But what about something like this, where there's not a clear subject? So again, I'll choose select subject, and let's see what it does. So it tries, it picks up as much as it can, but you know, it doesn't really know what to do with these edges. And the truth is, you're going to have to make some decisions because this doesn't have a clear edge. So what would you want to do in this case? Well, I'm going to zoom in, and I'll take that paint selection brush, make my brush a bit larger, and make sure I'm in the additive mode because I want to add to my selection. So what is pink is the object that I am selecting. What is not pink is the stuff that will not be included when I copy and paste this selection. So I'll just kind of go around this sort of quickly. This is, I just want to take a little bit more than it took. And maybe something like that. Okay, so who knows? Maybe even I want to get all the way over to here. And again, if I go too far with my selection, I can, let's say if I make a mistake, then I just go up to here to my options bar and I switch to the subtractive and I can erase that. And to be able to see this again as the marching ants, I just select one of my regular selection tools. So here it is. So again, that was a two-step process. I used my options bar down here to select the subject, and then I painted it in to refine it. And the third step might be, now you're only going to see this if you have a regular selection tool like the rectangular marquee, one of those selected. I can go up to this options bar and choose where it says select and mask. And there are some more options here to refine my selection. First is, your view might look a little bit different. I set mine up to have a gray background. You might have an onion background or marching ants. So you can have all these different backgrounds of how it shows you the things that are not selected. So I'll leave it on this overlay, for example. And down here are some refinements that I could make. See how my selection is a little bit wobbly? I could choose to kind of smooth that out if I wanted to. So see it as I'm increasing the smoothness, how the line here of my selection actually increased. Feather is not really something I think you'd want to do for this project, but just to point it out, a feather takes however many pixels you designate outside your selection, but it brings them in at like a diffused opacity, so you get this kind of diffused look on the edges. And then contrast if you want your edges to be sharper. Shift edge is if you want to reduce the size of your selection or increase the size of it. If I move it to the right, it takes more. And if I move it to the left, it takes less. All right, so these are more things that you can do to refine your selections. I'll just click OK. And so here's my selection. So if I copy this, and I'm just going to paste it over into this image, for example. And then there it is, all right? Now, let's see something like this image. So if I say select subject, it's really not going to know what the subject is because there's a lot of stuff going on. It thinks it's, I don't know, it did a very weird job. So I'm going to do Command D if you're on a Mac, Control D if you're on a PC to deselect. Instead, maybe I want to select these two butterflies. So I'm going to select them with my rectangular marquee tool. I'll put them on a new layer. And now they're on its own layer. Now when I say select subject, now it has less to kind of look through, and it did a good job of selecting my butterflies. All right, so again, that's a two-step process. Maybe you have to isolate the part of the image that you want to select, put it on a different layer, and then select it. Oh, how about something tricky like this? A tree. All right, well, let's see what we get if we do select subject. Takes a second here. All right. So maybe it looks okay. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell like this, and you guys shouldn't really just decide it's okay based on this. I can tell you right now that it took a lot of the white background, and I want for your goal for this homework and for all your assignments really to try to get the best selections you can, so no white background. Again, I will turn your background, so I'm going to paste this onto a new layer, turn this one off, and I'm going to make my background bright red, and this is what I do to your images so I can check, okay? So I will be doing this, and then this would be a little surprising, like, oop, there's actually a lot of white here. I'm going to go back a few steps here before I did that. I'll go back to select subject. That's where we left off. Remember that history panel is super useful. And I am going to go up to select and mask. I have that option because I have my rectangular marquee tool selected. Go up to select and mask. And you want to make sure that your view is on something where it really helps you block out the background, whether it's on red or white, anything like that. But so it makes it very obvious what the background is and where your white spots are. And in this case, I could try shifting the edge a little bit and try to bring it in, but that's not really what I want to do. All right, I'm going to take a paintbrush, and since I want to take away from my selection, I want to make sure that up here in the options bar I have the subtract mode in. And now I could go and start painting in some of those white spots to be able to try to get rid of them. All right, so it would be a little bit tedious, but it's something to do. You can also use the second brush here, the Refine Edge. This does a pretty good job as well, especially in spots that are kind of just really detailed. So you kind of make your brush not too large, but run over them, and it takes a second, and then it tries to figure out what's what and gets in there, okay? So it definitely takes a little bit of work. There are parts where maybe you just decide, okay, it's not worth it to even include this, but just deduct all of this from the selection. That's an option, but just kind of going through, checking those edges, going through, clicking around, trying to remove all the white as much as you possibly can. You can try the shift edge, sort of bringing the edge in a little bit, but you want to just keep going until you don't have any more white, and then you can hit OK or cancel if you don't like what you did. All right, so in the other videos I'll keep going through all of these different selection tools, but I just wanted to get you started with this one, and let me know if you have any questions.